go.
There we go. Back at it here with the Kaufman Corner podcast here on a Sunday night. Remember, if you are catching us via the podcast, we stream live Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Central, maybe taking people by surprise. You know, it's daylight savings time. We're talking Royals baseball here. The good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, one of the co-founders of Baseball Prospectus. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. Can Jac Caglianone get any bigger, any better than he's been so far? He's owned spring training. We'll talk about that. We're also going to give you our predictions for what we think the top five in each category is. Top five of Rookie of the Year, MVP, Cy Young. If there's time, we'll get into the Gold Glove Award winners. What we're basically trying to do is who could emerge, who has the ability to be somebody that you could just think about. Clearly, if we're going five deep at MVP or Cy Young, yes, we're reaching deep. We understand that that's the point. We're looking at potential. We're looking at upside. We're doing that right now on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
You're listening to the Kaufman Corner Podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and a former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by David Starnes Allstate Insurance, covering all the important things in your world. Home, business, life, and even the fun stuff as well. Motorcycle, boat, ATV, you name it, get with Dave and he'll have you covered. Give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave today. He'll give you peace of mind for the things in your life most important to you. And now, here are your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
All right, thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Back at it here on the Kaufman Corner podcast. And Rany, boy, I'll tell you what, sometimes we wonder, are we going to have something to talk about here? Are we going to have something, what are we going to have to do? These are the days we really, really earn our exorbitant pay we get for this podcast of love on the Kansas City Royals. And we thought today was going to be one of them, although I do kind of like the idea of, we'll see why. Maybe I like it a lot more than you do. But, Jac Caglianone just keeps pounding the baseball. And I don't know. I'm starting to worry. Is he like reaching mythical proportions? Are we being set up for what is the impending, letdown because he's not going to be able to live up to what are some unbelievably impossible expectations that he's creating with his play to this point? What do you think right now of what you're seeing with Jac Caglianone? He's clearly the story of spring training. We can agree on that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, around 3:00 this afternoon, we were, putting together our template for the show, and I suggested let's start with talking about the one thing we learned about the Royals in spring training this week. And in the back of my mind, the one thing that I was going to bring up was that Jac Caglianone might be closer to the major leagues than we thought when spring training began. But then around 3:45 in the afternoon, Jac Caglianone hit a ball 444 feet. And then at 4:20 this afternoon, he hit another ball off the center field wall. And it was clear that we shouldn't have to pretend that we don't know what the one thing we've learned about spring training is so far, because it's very clear. The one thing that we're talking about, the one story of spring training, is that with the 6th pick in the draft last year, the Royals might have actually hit on something even better than they expected, because it's hard not to get excited. Like, yes, he's was drafted 10 months ago, not even 9 months ago now, 8 months ago. He has 80 major league or 80 minor league plate appearances. They weren't particularly impressive in A-ball last year. He showed up in the Arizona Fall League. He was better, but still nothing there that said, this guy's ready for the major leagues. It's only 14 plate appearances, but if you believe in exit velocity, if you believe in bat speed, if you believe that the point of hitting a baseball is to strike the ball with extreme force and make it move with extreme velocity, then how do you not get excited about this guy? Like what he's doing sample sizes don't matter. A sample size of one plate appearance is enough when you hit a ball 115 miles an hour. And he's done that twice now. If you round up, today's EV was 114.6, all right, which is only the second hardest home run he has hit in 14 spring training plate appearances. Like this is starting to approach, like you said, mythical territory here.
Yeah, no, it is. And, invariably we had, let me go way back up here to Matt. Matt, let's sound the alarm bells. I'm ready to have Jack on the opening day roster. I've seen enough. I think the tongue is planted firmly in cheek on that one. But with many, it's not, right? There are many people, and we dealt with this with Bobby Witt Jr. the year before he was called up. People liked what they were seeing in spring training. He performed well. The Royals didn't call him up, didn't have him there. They sent him down. He spent the whole year down in the minor leagues, and he had struggles down in the minor leagues. And I expect the exact same thing to be with Jac Caglianone. Let me cover that ground. I think you're going to agree with me. That's what's going to happen. That's what should happen. And we will see him struggle at times in the minor leagues. Do you agree with all of that?
Yeah, I think he almost certainly is starting the season in the minor leagues. The one, like, there is a scenario, but it would involve an injury, probably to Vinny or to Salvador Perez, where he somehow makes the opening day roster. It's even then, I would say it's unlikely, but the odds were essentially 0 3 weeks ago. So the fact that it's like 1% is still notable. But yes, I expect him to go to Double-A, and then if he continues to perform the way he has, he'll move quickly. But like I have seen phenoms like this in spring training, drafted the year before, the talk of March, and by May they're hitting 220 in Double-A, and everyone's kind of forgotten what they did. So there is no guarantee that we are going to be continuing to talk about him like this in 2 months.
Yeah, I look, the power, the exit velocity we know is fantastic. The question is going to be the frequency of contact, right? Like that's part of it. I don't think anybody has any doubt on the power. What is your reaction when you hear things? I can't remember where I read it. I would give credit to it. I might have been David Lesky's piece, but I'm not sure. That they are trying to get him to not swing so hard. That like, listen, you're powerful enough, right? They don't all got to be 115. Like, I mean, it's almost like exit velocity is becoming the new distance or hang time. If you could get one of those that you really hung up in the air, you could stand there and watch it. It wasn't just enough to hit it over the wall. You had to stylistically hit it over the wall. I'm not saying that's what he's doing, but as fans, that's the exit velo. What is that? That's the new thing. It's like not just, a home run's not good enough. Look at the exit velocity on that as well. But I mean, I get that. I mean, I think the thought in general is good. It means that the guy has so much power. They're saying, look, you can back off 10, 15, 20%, still hit the ball over the wall and increase your frequency of contact, which will increase your number of home runs, certainly increase your batting average on base, doubles, all of those numbers as well. If you consistently square up the baseball more, I mean, that's pretty encouraging. I would think, or is it can you think of somebody that they tried that and they screwed them all up to hell? That it's a deadly practice, a deadly idea to try to mess with.
Well, I mean, the first thing I'd say is if they're trying to get him to not swing so hard, I think they failed because he's hitting the ball 115 miles an hour still. But on the other hand,
unless he did back off a little bit and he's still hitting the ball that hard.
Right, exactly. Well, the flip side is it might be working because to me, the most impressive thing about his spring training, the EVs are they're eye-opening, they're jaw-dropping, but we kind of know. I mean, he hit a ball 113, 114 in the AFL last November, and got our attention then. We knew he was capable of that, right? To me, the most impressive stat of his in spring training so far is in 14 plate appearances. Like I said, he's drawn 3 walks and struck out once. He's hit 3 home runs and struck out 1 time. Even in 14 plate appearances, that is notable. His home run today, what was impressive to me was it came on a full count. Because this is a guy who did not have a reputation for plate discipline in college. And the Royals acknowledged, I think, we've talked to people in the organization. They've said, he's a great prospect. Don't expect this guy. He's not the, Jonathan India going to walk 90 times in a season or whatever. He's going to, his calling card is his power. The plate discipline is a work in progress. So the fact that you're seeing even that willingness to take pitches, to realize, yeah, you can hit a ball 150 miles an hour. Wait for your pitch. Like, pick out the right pitch and then hammer it. And to me, the second plate appearance today where he hit the double off the wall was maybe more impressive than the first. I mean, the thing you could say to minimize what he's done so far is that almost all of the competition he has seen to this point have been minor league pitchers. The average quality against the pitcher quality that he has faced before today was roughly a double-A pitcher in terms of where that pitcher was last year. Because early in spring training, you're getting all these minor league guys.
Right.
So basically, for every guy he faced who was a triple-A pitcher, he was also facing somebody who topped out last year in A-ball. So, yeah, he can hit minor league pitching. Okay, that's different than hitting major league pitching. But today, he hit the home run off of Aaron Savali, who's been a quality major leaguer for 5 years. We've seen him as the Guardians for 4 years until I think 2023. They traded him away. He's a very good pitcher. I believe the pitch was only 87. It was kind of a batting practice fastball. His second at bat was against Nestor Cortes, who, the last we saw was giving up walk-off grand slams to Freddie Freeman in the World Series, but he was pitching in the World Series, right? Like, Nestor Cortes was a very good pitcher last year for the Yankees, and he's left-handed. And he has kind of a funky three-quarters motion. He was much tougher on left-handed batters than right-handed batters last year. Last year, Cortes only gave up 2 home runs to lefties all season. He almost gave up a home run to Caglianone today, again, off the top of the wall in center field, and went like 401 feet. So the quality of pitching today, he answered some of those concerns. He hit 2 lasers off of major league caliber starting pitchers. So, it's becoming harder and harder to find, a way to fault what he has done. The only fault you can find is sample size. We need to continue to see this from him. But I'm really impressed with the fact that he's working deep into counts, finding a hittable fastball, and belting the ever-loving crap out of it. And I want to see him do more of that.
Yeah. No, I think, listen, you got to be excited. Now you just have to contain the excitement. You have to understand that there is a process. These returns are great. That's wonderful to see. But I was looking back through some older shows. We've had some moments like this. I can remember people pestering me for Bobby Witt Jr. Like I said, a year before he ever came up. And we know that the first year that he was up, he had a sub 300 on base percentage. The second year, still sub 300 on base percentage, right? 295. And that was after having a year in the minor leagues that a lot of people didn't want him to have. So there is a process. This is great. I think you make an excellent point about the average pitcher being double-A caliber. So there's work to be done, but it's all right. There's plenty of time. I guess I would ask you then, what do we think about, when is the timeline? Now, does this change your timeline or no? None of this will matter once he goes to double-A. That will, how he performs at double-A will set the calendar.
So this wouldn't change my timeline except for something I'm about to read for you from our good buddy Jeff Passan.
Okay.
Who recently, this was I think yesterday or 2 days ago, an article he wrote for a website, ESPN.com, you may have heard of, on the 10 players who are the buzz of spring training. And yes, Jac Caglianone was on the list. Most of this you know already, but it's the last sentence in here I want to read to you. Kansas City has something of a first base glut with Vinny Pasquantino and Salvador Perez. So Caglianone will get outfield reps this year and could find himself playing in a corner, accelerating the timeline for his big league debut to perhaps as soon as this summer. So that accelerates his timeline in my mind a lot more than what he's doing, because if he's a first base DH only, you have got to find a spot for him, and that's hard to do if Vinny Pasquantino is playing first base every day, and you want to keep Salvador Perez fresh by DHing him 40% of the time.
Tyler is so right on this. It makes me so sad that they're considering putting him at right field because they have such a big logjam at first base. And I agree. Like, trade somebody. I mean, stop the silliness. I don't understand the idea. It's just ridiculous having him run around the outfield.
Well, look, we talked about this before, and you made a very good point about the guy, just somebody with his size. It's rare, very rare to see them playing the outfield. And I do not see him as I do not see him as a long-term solution. He's not going to be playing right field when he's 30, but he is 22. And I don't want to rule out the possibility that he could be a solution short term in right field this year until we've at least had a chance to see him try it. Like if it doesn't go swimmingly well in the first, couple weeks of April in Double-A, if they have him playing out there, okay, abandon the experiment, move him back to first base, let him get on with his career and hitting hopefully 400 home runs in the major leagues or whatever. But I'm willing to give it a shot because if he can handle right field even passably, it changes the dynamic of this season because he could be a solution. He could be the Royals' best option in a corner outfield spot by mid-year. It would not at all surprise me if he can handle the position. I think it's worth trying. He has the raw building blocks. He has the arm. He still has some speed. He's not first base slow at this point in his career. The concern, like you said, is size and basically injury risk is what you're mostly concerned about. But I'm willing to give it a shot because he fits a hole. The one hole the Royals didn't fix all winter that we've talked about, he could fill it. And I'm willing to gamble a little bit on the downside because I think the upside is real.
Well, you gamble away, buddy. You gamble away because
we both know I'm the gambler in this on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm just not. And I don't understand why you would mess with it, right? Like it just, to me, doesn't make any sense. I just, for the life of me, can't figure it out.
Okay, well, I'm just reading, Jeff, I wouldn't have brought it up except that Jeff Passan's reporting it in his article means the Royals are at least considering it.
Right. So, and the Royals have never made a mistake, correct?
When the Royals agree with me, they have never made a mistake. That is correct.
Is that right? Okay.
No, it's not right, but let go with me for a moment here.
But you get
I completely understand. It's a risk. And you're like I said, your point about his size and just his history, it's well taken. It would be a gamble, but there are some examples of successes. I can't say it that it can't work. And I just feel like the worst case scenario, okay, he looks terrible out there. You move him back to first base. Okay, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I don't think it's going to affect his long-term future if you give him a few weeks in right field to see if he can handle the position. I mean, they're trying to teach Jonathan India to play the outfield in spring training and have him start there on opening day. Like, nobody's blinking about that. So, like, I feel like letting Caglianone do it in the minor league.
I'm blinking about it and have been blinking about it, and you know that.
Yeah, but the point is somebody has to play left field on opening day, and we cannot go into the season with MJ Melendez and Hunter Renfroe both playing the corner outfield again at the same time. Like, fine, in a platoon, but like not both of them at the same time. So yeah, there's no, it's not ideal, but there's no ideal solution. So among the non-ideal solutions, this is one I would consider.
Yeah, I mean, but it does look like India is making his way to third base, right? Like that's where this looks like it's headed, and it's where I've said it was going to head all along. That's the vibe I've gotten from the people I've spoken to, is that this is where it will ultimately go. That maybe he was going to show some people, and I think if you see that, I understand what you're saying, and if it's short term, but like I think if you make good long term decisions, the reason the Dodgers are where they are is they don't do these stupid short term things. They make good long term decisions all the time. And once you start doing that and you get the practice of doing it and you do it over and over again, you end up with a good team. Like when you draft Jac Caglianone, you set sail on he's going to be our first baseman, and you begin to open the door. You had a trade deadline last year. Did you really think you were going to win a World Series? Did they mention Vinny Pasquantino to anybody last year at the trade deadline? Did they mention Salvador Perez to anybody? Did they get to the offseason? Did they talk about Salvador Perez or Vinny Pasquantino? Like the whole idea, like to me, you have to have a big picture plan and you have to stick to it all the way. And Jac Caglianone became your plan at first base. And so now we want to put our toe in the water, but we want to, you can't swing through the jungle unless you let go of the last mine. Okay. You got to grab the next one. And then you got to grab the next one, and you got to
Yeah,
grab.
but if the next vine is like to the left or to the right, you can't just reach forward and fall to the ground because
Don't take my metaphor any further than I mean it to go, Randy.
Well, then let me use a different example since you brought up the Dodgers. The Dodgers, they do stuff like this. I'll give you a great example. Max Muncy. Max Muncy was like a find out of nowhere in 2018. It was an early example of the Dodgers turning some minor league journeyman into like
That's not the number 6 overall pick. If you're going to reference the number 6 overall pick to a guy that they back-assed into and say, you should take that plan, I'm going to lose my mind. My head's going to explode.
No. The point is, when in 2018, he mostly was their first baseman. Then he played in 2019, was mostly at second. Then mostly back at first in 2020, 2021. Then 4 years in, they're like, we need you at third base. They had a hole at third base. They moved him over to third base at age 31, and he's been playing mostly third, although he's played some second base as well. He keep moving around. I mean, they won a World Series with him as their first baseman 5 years ago now, and then last year with him at third base. Like, the Justin Turner's moved all around the field. You know, Kike Hernandez is like everywhere. And these are guys they pay lots of money to. Yeah, maybe not the number 6 pick, but these are like established veterans who are everyday players. These are not utility guys. They're too good to be utility guys, but they use them like utility. For God's sake, they moved Mookie Betts, who is one of the 2 or 3 best players in the sport.
Okay.
Not just a second base. They made him a shortstop for the first time in his professional life.
I will rescind the Dodgers comment, but I will no, not because I've been bettered. Mookie Betts weighs 180 pounds. Okay, Jacob Turner is listed at that's the wrong one. I don't know what they listed. Max Muncy is listed at 215 pounds. The purpose of the exercise is not that guys that weigh 185 to 210 can't move around. The purpose of what I'm saying, my point is he's 250 listed pounds. And he looks bigger than that to me. So
is your concern that there's no way he can be good defensively, or is that he's going to get hurt?
My concern is you did not draft him to be a defensive player. You drafted him to hit. Okay. And my concern is that this organization is the organization that sent Bobby Witt Jr. to second and to third. Like, we can all celebrate that he's an MVP caliber player right now. But I want to remind people, for 2 years, they were MFing dumbasses for taking Bobby Witt Jr. and playing him anywhere else because Adalberto Mondesi was in the way. Now, I will grant you, Vinny Pasquantino and Salvador Perez are clearly much more successful players. But all it takes is a quick look in the mirror and to remind yourself, we moved Bobby Witt Jr. for Adalberto Mondesi. And it was asinine. There was at least one fat ass with 2 thumbs who was telling you this was the dumbest thing you could possibly do on a podcast here in Kansas City. Okay. And if you couldn't figure that out, I don't know. It was a room full of people rooting for their predictions on Adalberto Mondesi that they didn't want to give up on. They called him a generational talent. And in reality, he never could hit. He never could hit. Not at any time. And so they took an MVP player and shoved him around and stunted his growth. He sucked at shortstop his first year. Boom. I wonder if it had something to do with they played him at second base for a year, then they put him at third base. I wonder if that had something to do with it. If Jac Caglianone, if you're telling me we're not sure what he is, we don't know. He might just be a fringy player. Okay, fine. Then give him a glove. But let's give everybody a couple of gloves. Right? This should be the organizational philosophy then for everybody. Maikel Garcia should not have failed for 3 years with the bat before they finally said, get out to the outfield. Then make this the plan for everybody. And I'm fine with it. But that's not what they've done. Right? They give everybody their little security blanket, and now they're going to go, okay, the guy with the biggest upside, we're going to make you be the guy that has to move around.
You make some good points. What I will say is I want to focus on the positive and just say the fact that we are talking about Jac Caglianone 8 months after he was drafted in the same paragraph in the same chapter as Bobby Witt is a good sign. Like, at the time they drafted him, we were happy with the pick, but we weren't ecstatic. I didn't think at the time that the Royals had gotten a huge had a gift fall into their lap that he fell to 6th. Because remember last year, the Royals kind of got screwed in the lottery. Like they should before the lottery, they would, I think, would have had the second pick in the draft. Was it? They had the second worst record in baseball in 2023, and unfortunately, they fell to 6. But it was a year where there was no clear number one player. Travis Bazzana was the number one pick from the Guardians. Now the guys who were taken ahead of him, you got Bazzana, you got Nick Kurtz, who was another first baseman the A's took, who, there was 2 pitchers, Chase Burns, who hasn't even made his pro debut yet, and Nick Hagan, I think. And then there was one other guy, Charlie Condon, who was a phenomenal, one of the best college outfielders ever, but had a really disappointing pro debut. Like if you did that draft over again today, Caglianone's not falling to 6. And there's a case to be made right now, even with just, small sample size. He might go number 1. I'm just saying, like,
agreed.
I feel very good about that pick right now.
Yeah, we are feeling very good, and we should feel very good. And the returns are very good right now. We should also point out that 2 years from now, he might go 22. He might go 52. Right? If he gets up and can't hit. Like, we are getting excited about spring training home runs against what you pointed out was average AA pitching.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We don't know what he is, but we've gone from, he's a good pick and, we'll see him down the line, to both, in the back of our head, both of us, there's that little devil in the head saying he could be in their, lineup for game 1 of the ALDS or whatever. Like, there is a scenario now, and that's exciting. That is fun.
Very exciting.
And look, if you can't enjoy dreaming about that right now in March, then why are you a baseball fan?
Because listen, and I do want to be clear. I'm very positive. Everything about him is positive right now, right? I just do not like huge people running around the outfield because you can't develop an outfielder. I think that's, and we had the question, why can't he be our Aaron Judge? Because there are like 2 dudes that have weighed over 250 pounds that have played more than like 100 games out there of any consequence. And it's Aaron Judge and it's Adam Dunn. And Adam Dunn largely bought a ticket.
Adam Dunn never should have been an outfielder.
Right. And
I'm not sure she'd have ever been a fielder, period.
and Aaron Judge has played a full season like twice. So, like, you're making my point for me. Like, how much better would Aaron Judge have been for the Yankees, and how many more playoffs would they have had Aaron Judge played first base? That's the argument that I would make. I mean, I let him. That's the argument I'll make for Caglianone. I mean, if no one's ever done it before you, it's probably going to be pretty difficult for you to do it. And it's not no one. There's only a couple of guys. Hey, maybe he'll go out. Maybe he will be Aaron Judge, and maybe he'll break, Cal Ripken's record by playing every day in center field for 20 years, and I'll be proven wrong, and I'll be thrilled to be wrong about the whole process, right? You'll always be thrilled if you're in the market for insurance. Let David Starnes Allstate Insurance help you. David Starnes Allstate Insurance, serving the Kansas City area and all throughout the Midwest. With David Starnes Allstate, it's not just about fender benders. Beyond traditional safeguards, enjoy perks like roadside assistance for unexpected breakdowns, transportation expense coverage when your car is in the shop, auto replacement protection to keep you on the road in style, and much more. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, Randy, let's talk a little bit about Rookie of the Year, right? The 5 guys that this year, in order, have the best chance. Now, obviously, we're going to get after about one guy. I think after one guy, you're talking longest of long shots. And it's a long shot after the first guy, which is going to be Jac Caglianone. He's tops on my list. I assume he's tops on yours.
Yes, he is, absolutely is now. I mean, the scenario here basically is, he comes up.
But I want to point out real quick before we go in and get deep on him. The purpose of this is to just evaluate what prospects are there, who could come up, and kind of what their upside is on this year. It is not because there's always somebody's like, you really think this guy? No, I don't really think number 5 is going to win the Rookie of the Year. Okay. And number 5 on my MVP list, no, I don't think he's going to win MVP. So just understand the purpose of the exercise. Okay. Now, Caglianone, we both have tops. How much of a shot, though, do we think he would actually have?
I mean, if I had to put a percentage chance that he wins Rookie of the Year this year, I mean, 5% at most, right? Like, it would involve him coming up like in early June in like 100 games, playing every day and hitting like 25 jacks, slugging like over 500, right? And the Royals almost certainly making the playoffs. And the narrative is, they got a huge shot in the arm from this kid that they brought up, and they started winning, and he's Rookie of the Year. I mean, it absolutely could happen, right? Like, Paul Skeens didn't start the season on the Pirates roster last year, and was Rookie of the Year going away, because if he has that kind of talent, you can win a Rookie of the Year at 2/3 of a season. You can't really do that with like an MVP, but you can do that with Rookie of the Year.
All right. So the real conversation becomes, who you got number 2?
So yeah, like you said, it's a huge, huge drop here, right? And I don't want anyone to think that any of these guys are likely. But this is like, to me, the exercise in my head was just sort of who could come up and have an impact, a good impact, like not Rookie of the Year, but just like, oh yeah, he was a really good rookie for the Royals this year. So number 2 on my list is Noah Cameron.
Okay, me too.
And he's, the thinking here, left-handed, polished. The stuff, is starting to play up. He's added a little bit of velocity in spring training. Presuming the Royals have, an opening in their rotation sometime early to mid-season, like in May or June, and Cameron comes up and he's just like steady, crafty lefty, puts up like a 3.50 ERA and 110 innings. There are seasons where it's a very weak Rookie of the Year crop where that guy wins Rookie of the Year. Like, he gets a little lucky with wins and loss. He gets run support and he goes 8-3 or something like that. And there's some Rookie of the Year buzz. Unlikely, but yes, there's absolutely a scenario where Noah Cameron could be getting Rookie of the Year buzz by the end of the year.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that is kind of what you're looking for, is for, the next guy, as you put it, that you feel like, I don't think he's the biggest lock to get to the big leagues, because it's going to take some injuries, but injuries come to pitchers. Because I'll bring number 3 into the conversation. My number 3 is Gavin Cross. Okay. Now, again, not because I think it's going to happen, but I think he is pushing up to where he's might be the first bat that could come up and have a shot at sticking. When he came up, I think if he would he has the pedigree, and his numbers, got better last year. And he has the pedigree, if he is hitting well, they're going to want to bring him up and they're going to want him to stay. It's time for him. He's age appropriate to come up now. And I think if it would all click and he'd be the guy, like I said, there's a pedigree of being a top 10 pick. And so I think he could come up, stay up, and accumulate the stats. And obviously anyone beyond Caglianone, and even Caglianone's a long shot, but it's going to take a lot of circumstances. But I think Gavin Cross is one of the few guys that could get there with, say, 2/3 of the season still to go. An injury maybe opens the door for him. He comes up, he hits well, they stay with him, and he runs to the finish line and wins a close Rookie of the Year vote with some good numbers, and he starts to realize the potential that they thought he had when they drafted him. So I've got Gavin Cross number 3 on my list. Where does he make your top 5?
Ultimately, I decided not to, but the reason was that I just, to me, the number one reason, the first sort of roadblock to making this list was just opportunity. And I just worry that even if like with Cameron, it's very clear, if they're a starter or 2 short, we know that they might consider calling him up. With Gavin Cross, even though the Royals have need in the outfield, not worry, but I feel like they'll probably go to like Tyler Gentry before Gavin Cross.
Do you really think so with this? You don't think they give their first round picks preference, like every club does? Not that they're unique, but that they aren't just trying to get those guys there. I mean, clubs love to bring a guy up for a week or two so they can say that their draft had this many big leaguers in it. They love to play those games. We've seen the Royals do it. Bubba Starling came up. There was no reason for Bubba Starling to be up, but they wanted to make sure their first round pick made it to the big leagues. You don't see like that they would give the nod to Gavin Cross if they're both hitting. Who's coming up? I think Gavin Cross is coming up.
The difference is that he's not on the 40-man roster yet. He doesn't have to be added. And
On-
I just worry that could, their teams are all obsessive about inventory. And if they don't have to, release somebody to make room for him, Tyler Gentry's on the 40-man, Drew Waters still on the 40-man. Like, I just feel like they'll probably turn to those guys first. So for Gavin Cross to get an opportunity, either he has to suddenly show.
Real quick, sorry to interrupt you, but Cross has got to go on next year, though, right?
He does. So they would. I don't think if he's raking, like if we suddenly see the guy they drafted, with the 9th overall pick, yeah, he'll earn it. But like, I don't see them turning to him, over those other guys unless he has clearly passed them. It could happen, absolutely. I just think that's one more impediment to him getting on this list.
Okay.
And that's why my list, my next guy is also a pitcher, just because I feel like on the pitching side is where you have the most, potential for injury. So my number 3 guy was Steven Zobak.
Okay.
Who, he's behind Noah Cameron. He's a level behind him, but the stuff definitely plays up. He may even have better stuff. He's right-handed. And, basically it takes one of these guys to have their velocity tick up another 2 to 3 miles an hour, and suddenly they're a phenom. Like, pitchers, and that will happen where a guy suddenly in, mid-April, you look through the minor leagues and there's 3 or 4 guys in minor league organizations that have taken a huge step forward, and overnight their prospect status has shot through the roof. That could be Zobak. If he's sitting 95, 96 this year with his command, he could be a quick to the major leagues kind of riser. And those guys, you can drop them into a major league rotation, and sometimes they just find success immediately. So kind of like Noah Cameron, probably wouldn't be up in May or June, but might be a better pitcher when he arrives. So in the best case scenario, he's up by the All-Star break and is, the Royals playoff rotation, let us say, come October. So unlikely, but possible.
Okay. I have number 3 for me, or number 4 for me, is Javier Vaz. Now he's hurt. That sets him back, and I almost took him off the list because of that, but it doesn't sound like he's going to be out that long. Broke some bones in his fingers, right, is what I'm understanding.
I think, 2 fingers, but
right,
the fingers, not the hand. So hopefully it'll heal faster.
So it'll heal faster. So, but I think the opportunity, if some other, I think he looks like he might be just one adjustment away from being ready to get to the big leagues. Then he has on-base skills, and I think that's something this team really needs. And I think, like you said, playoff run, not likely that he's going to be there, but I could see him being a guy that could come up and stick if he's consistently getting on base. And, he already has position flexibility. This is a guy, like I said, if this is what we're doing, then let's do it. And they've done it with this guy. And there's a pedigree coming from Vanderbilt. And, I don't think, I listened to some of his interview with Jack Johnson, who works with me at Sports Radio 810. And he sounded the part, like a guy who's ready and expects to be there. And he was, a 15th round pick. That didn't deter. That was the mistake of baseball. Not that I'm a 15th rounder. They made that mistake. He sounded super confident while not being arrogant. I just like the guy, and I think there is the potential. Look, Nick Lofton's had his moments here in spring, and we like Kevin Biggio, but there's a lot of, receipts that say that neither one of those guys are going to stick. So I do think there's an opportunity for Javier Vaz to get into the mix. So
absolutely. He's number 5 on my list. Exactly what you said. And they really, like you said, the issue was he just broke the fingers in his hand. Otherwise he would have been higher on my list. And the reason, it's not just that he's like fairly polished and ready to go. He's spent, the better part of 2 seasons in AA now. But it's the type of player he is, kind of a high on base, high contact guy. And he's the kind of guy, even though he's probably a utility player in the end, where if he comes up and just has a lot of batted ball luck, he's a guy who could, in 300 or 400 plate appearances, could just randomly hit 310 or 320, right? And he's not a true 310, 320 hitter. Everybody knows that, but the numbers are the numbers. And if he just has good luck on balls in play, and you finish with a 320 batting average as a rookie, you're going to get Rookie of the Year votes. Right. Even if you're playing all over the field and have no power or whatever it is. And, he does get on base. Like, he could run a 370, 380 OBP. Kind of a poor man, Stephen Kwan. And Stephen Kwan, did he win Rookie of the Year, or certainly placed very high just 3 years ago? He finished 3rd. So, I think there's absolutely a path, but I do worry that the finger injury is going to keep him out for, a month or 2 at least.
And Zobak's my number 5.
Okay, perfect. So my number 4, which, was the only player we haven't mentioned. I had to put Carter Jensen on the list. He's my top prospect.
I'm surprised he wasn't already hired.
I mean, I don't see it. There's no path from unless Salvi or Freddie gets hurt or Freddie Fermin get hurt. But I mean, catching is a tough position. So if that happens, it basically involves an injury opens up and he plays as well as I think he's capable. He takes that step forward that I'm really excited to see him do. Unlikely, but the talent is there. The opportunity is one injury away. So I couldn't not put him on my list.
We'll give you our MVP list. Give you a moment to sit and think if you can figure out who will be at the top of our MVP list. It's
big mystery.
Really, yeah, it's a sleeper. We're always brought to you by our friends at Northland Injury Law. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait, get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222, or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warning. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. All right, Randy, let's talk about the MVP. Bobby Witt Jr., we both have him #1. Right. Has
there been a player in a season in Royals history who is more likely before the season began to be the MVP? Like George Brett in like 79 or 80, 81, going into the 81 season after winning, maybe you'd put him up there. Although he was older then than Bobby is now. I mean, it's just hilarious. Sometimes we take it for granted now because we've been watching him every day for 3 years, but like, he won the Gold Glove at shortstop with a batting title and set the franchise record for extra base hits in a season. Like, if God crafted the perfect 5-tool ball player, what would he look like other than Bobby Witt? Like Willie Mays has always been the mold for the perfect 5-tool player. Because Willie had the 6-tool, which was durability, one of the most durable everyday players we've ever seen. Bobby has been extremely durable for 3 seasons. In 15 years, he keeps us up for 15 years. We may be talking about Bobby Witt the same way. So
yeah, for sure.
He should be #1 on this list for as long as you and I are doing this list, and he's a member of the Royals.
All right, #2.
So my #2 for MVP, and again, same idea. Nobody here after Bobby is likely to, or even unlikely to, but like you can craft a situation. My #2 is Vinny. I have Vinny Pasquantino, and the idea basically being that he hits this year the way he hit last year with runners in scoring position, which we talked about with him. Where he didn't try and sell out for power, used all fields, hit I think he hit 365 or something like that with runners in scoring position. I'm not going to say he's do it for a full year, but let's say he hits 320 with 25 home runs. And batting behind Jonathan India now and Bobby Witt, that's a crap ton of RBIs right there. And look, voters don't like the voting now is so much better than it was 15 years ago. Because I'm advocating for the year Justin Morneau won the MVP over Joe Mauer, his teammate in Minnesota, like 15 years ago, where Joe Mauer was the better player, but Morneau got all the ribbies. I don't think the vote would go that way now, but let's say Bobby has a little bit of an off season. No one else steps up. Like you could craft a scenario where Vinny's in the running in all 3 Triple Crown categories. He's not going to win the Triple Crown, but he comes close in all 3. He could win an MVP.
I've got Vinny at 4 because I think, from our conversation we had with him earlier, and you can go back on the podcast, we had Vinny on the podcast, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 weeks ago. And Sounds to me like he's looking to hit to all fields, so I don't think the power numbers are going to be there. But I like what you're saying. I think he can bounce back on base. I think having Indy at the top is going to help everybody in the lineup. So I think he could have some impressive numbers, and so I've got him number 4 on my list. You're going to love one of the guys I have behind him, or have in front of him. By the way, when we get to it, so I've got Vinny at number 4. All right.
Who's your number 2?
My number 2 is Cole Reagans, and so I just because again we're talking about, well, he's going to come up in the Cy Young. Yes, he is going to come up in the Cy Young, but I actually think he's probably got the second best chance because I think he's got the kind of stuff to have such a dominant season that he wins the Cy Young and the MVP. I don't think it's going to happen by any stretch of the imagination, but I think he is closer to being truly great and getting recognition in the MVP than anybody else on the roster right now. So I've got him number 2. Okay?
It's a really good pick. I ultimately chose not to put him on the list. I just wanted to have like more names to discuss, but and I mean it would take a truly sublime season from a starter to garner and actual first place in the MVP. This century, I believe only 2 starters have done it. Justin Verlander did it for the Tigers, I want to say, many years ago, and then Clayton Kershaw. If I'm going off memory, so I could be wrong, but I believe that has happened twice in both leagues combined in like 25 years. But it has happened, right? The biggest concern is in order to do it, you probably have to throw over 200 innings, probably 220, 230 innings. Like, will Cole Reagans be allowed to? But you know what? He might. He signed a 3-year deal. They worked him up to 185 last year. And actually, if you throw in, I mean, you which you should, you throw in the playoffs, and I think he did top 200, 186 plus 10. Okay. 196 innings last year. So like there's no reason he can't go 220, let's say, this year. But you're talking about, a 250 or lower ERA, maybe pushing 300 strikeouts. Like, it would take fun. But we both agree that, like, in a perfect world, if he has basically if he puts his best performance in a start, strings together 34 of them or whatever, he could do that.
Yes.
There are very few guys we could say that about. So I like that.
He's got his upside is good enough that if he did it consistently, he could get there. All right, who's number 3 for you?
So number 3 for me, and I'm wondering if it's number 3 for you. We both off the reservation because again, these are all wild long shots.
I'm already.
I have MJ Melendez.
MJ Melendez is number 3 for me.
Yep.
All right, no chance, not a snowball's chance in hell of it happening, but he's the only guy with upside power.
Exactly.
That could put up the kind of numbers it takes to win an MVP. There's no shot of it happening, but
the narrative
power.
Where if he does that, it means the Royals are almost certainly, if the biggest hole on the roster is suddenly, replaced with a guy who puts up a 900, 950 OPS, 30 bombs, whatever it is, that the Royals are going to the playoffs, right? Like we assume that. So like if the narrative is the Royals went to the playoffs because of this massive breakout season from MJ Melendez, he will get narrative points for that too.
Yeah.
Very unlikely. But when you're trying to pick MVP candidates, variance is your friend. You want the guy who will probably fall flat on his face, but might put it all together over just the steady Eddie guy. So yes, he's number 3 for me.
All right. And I've already said that at number 4, I have Vinny Pasquantino. So number 4 for you.
So number 4 for me, I put Salvador Perez, and it's very unlikely, but the idea here basically is he has one great, like, last swan song of a season, and the Royals craft some sort of narrative. Let's say they are 8 games out of a playoff spot in August, but come roaring back and make the playoffs at the end. Like, there's a precedent for this. If you go back, I mean, we're going back like 50 years now, but Willie Stargell, if you recall, 1979, was it? Yeah, 1979, the We Are Family Pirates, who ended up winning the World Series. Willie Stargell was 39 years old, didn't even play every day. Ended up, I think he tied, or it's only first place tie in MVP history with Keith Hernandez. And he was, wasn't even an outfielder. He was a first baseman at that point. But like, he was the veteran calming influence on this team that surprised everybody by winning their division and ultimately winning the World Series. Got a lot of narrative points for that and ended up, winning an MVP despite, by modern metrics, like not having a good season at all. Barely good season, certainly not MVP caliber. So it's very unlikely, but it would require some sort of interesting narrative. Like, is it a big comeback at the end of the year or something? But if Salvador goes out and hits 30, 35 home runs, hits 270, 100 RBIs, has a good catching season, etc. His framing numbers are good again, like they were last year. Like you could definitely see there's a groundswell of support and love for him in the game that might push him over the top.
I have no problems whatsoever with Salvador Perez. In fact, he was the last guy I cut. I had him in the top 5. I ended up bouncing him, and I put just because I think it's more likely of this guy having a big year, and I think there's still ceiling to be reached if he can stay healthy. I have Michael Massey at number 5. That if he would have a 30 home run season from the second base spot, I put Michael Massey there. I don't really think there is. Salvador Perez is probably the odds would be much lower on Salvador Perez than they would be Michael Massey. But I just don't think there's any shot at this age of Salvador Perez having the kind of year it would take. Michael Massey, maybe there's a 40 home run year in that bat. We just haven't seen whatever his upside is. So I took the flyer on Michael Massey. Who's number 5 for you?
So it was from number 5 for me was a coin flip between Massey and this guy who I ultimately picked. I picked Jonathan India.
Okay.
And the reason is simply because he's new to the team. So that if the Royals have mind you, they're coming off a good season. We know that. But if they have another good year, there's a narrative where the addition of this new player, let's say the offense, the Royals score 850 runs or some crazy number, right? What changed? Well, the only real material change from outside the organization was trading for Jonathan India, whereas Massey's been here all along. So if he goes out and leading off for this lineup, if Bobby Witt does Bobby Witt things and Vinny hits with runners in scoring position like he did, could Jonathan India score 110, 120 runs? Right. We don't look at runs maybe as much as we do RBIs, but you could see a scenario where he's certainly getting MVP votes. Maybe doesn't win, but he finishes top 5 or whatever. He goes out and has a 400, 410 OBP and scores 120 runs. That'll get a lot of attention, I think.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go to Cy Young. We both have Cole Riggins at the top, right?
Yes. It's not quite the Bobby Witt on the MVP side, but it's close.
Okay. Number 2. Yours? Did you just go chalk and go Seth Lugo?
At 2, yes. Seth Lugo has to be number 2 because
he doesn't because I don't have him number 2.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I'm excited to hear your rationale. My argument is if he just pitches as well as he did last year, there is a scenario where, he gets a little lucky with balls in play or whatever, has a 2.70 ERA, and if nobody else steps up, he could win a Cy Young without pitching better than he already has pitched. So I felt like that had to be number 2.
I think we've seen his best season and he didn't win. Right. That's why I don't have him number 2. Is there somebody out there who's got potentially more? And the answer is Chris Bubich. If he carries forward the strikeout to walk ratio that he has been showing, not as a reliever, but even, 16-2 in the limited sample size we got before he got hurt. I think the upside on Chris Bubich, and I think he'll fall way short of a Cy Young, but he's showing an incredible control with still the ability to get the swing and miss. And so we don't know what the ceiling is, right? We got an idea. I think it'll be a guy that throws 150 innings and, they kind of protect. He's 5 and change in the door, 6 in the door. I don't think he'll go deep enough into ball games. I think they'll protect him a little bit. We don't know what's going to happen when they see him a third time, but there's some quiet upside there for Chris Bubich. So where I think Seth Lugo, we've seen the best Seth Lugo has to offer. So I'm intrigued by what Chris Bubich could do. There could be some really impressive strikeout, pretty good strikeout to innings, not like what some of the top guys do in baseball today. There are a lot of guys that can really ring the strikeout bell. I think those are going to come back to the pack, but his strikeout to walk numbers could be really, really intriguing. And so from that standpoint, he's got a good team around him. I'll take a flyer on Chris Bubich number 2, and then I have Seth Lugo at number 3.
You don't have to sell me on Chris Bubich, obviously. I have him number 4 on my list, but my main concern is just I don't see him getting enough innings. Even if he's excellent, I'm not sure he'll get to 150. In 150 innings, it's hard. Even in 2025, it's hard to see a guy winning the Cy Young unless he's like Paul Skeen's caliber was last year, and he didn't win, but he got close. So that was the reason I don't have him at number 2. But on a per inning basis, yeah, I could definitely see a scenario where he's better than Seth Lugo or anyone else really.
Okay.
So yeah, that I completely understand. So yeah, my number 3, I decided to be, again, because we're in long shot territory anyway, I went a little unconventional here, because I went with a reliever.
Okay.
At some point, we're talking about top 5. Unless we're just listing the starting rotation, you have to dip in somewhere. So I went with Lucas Erceg.
Okay.
And just, the scenario is that, he throws, 85 innings and just has, he's dominant, but also has good fortune. And it's one of those years where everything goes right and he has an ERA below 1. I mean, you think about what like Emmanuel Clase did last year for the Guardians in terms of, innings, but also, an ERA under 1 or whatever. And he finished third in the Cy Young vote. If anybody in the bullpen has the ability to do that, I think it's Erceg. Estevez may get the closer role, but I don't feel like saves matter as much for the Cy Young vote as they used to. Like it used to be, you could be the best reliever in baseball. If you're not a closer, you're not getting consideration now. He'll get at least a few saves, but I think the writers are sophisticated enough. They just look at performance. And if you have that many innings and that low in ERA, if no starter really has a dominant season, then you'll get consideration for the award.
I have Lucas Erceg number 4 as well. Let me just say that I hate the leverage thing. I don't think it's going to work. And he didn't do well. We talked about it coming down the stretch. They kept wanting to put him into these high leverage situations. He didn't do well. He did great when he was in the 9th inning. And I think there's something to be said for how Ned Yost. I mean, it's great that you want to put guys in leverage, but to do that, you got to get them ready quick. Right. And I think, guys, the one thing about that I think the Royals bullpen at 14 and 15 really benefited from, everybody knew their role. Everybody knew when they were coming up, and you got the absolute best out of every one of those guys. And I think that's the one lesson that people are missing from the 14-15 Royals is that it's not stratomatic. You don't just set down the card and the guy gives you the numbers that he gives you. There is a process to it. Mariano Rivera was lights out. And what did you see? 7th inning, up he goes with the elastic bands and getting the arm ready. He went through his whole routine. He would come out there and he'd be great. We saw that with every one of the Royals relievers. 7, 8, 9. They all knew when it was. They all went through their routine, and they were all lights out. I wish that that's what they would do. It seems to me like what they've done is given Estevez $11 million a year, so they have to justify that. So they're going to make him the 9th inning guy, something they wouldn't do, which was just as easy to justify to say, well, we traded for Erceg and we gave up good stuff for him, so he's going to be our 9th inning guy. No, they immediately had this vision for him that he was going to be this stopper, fireman guy, and so that's the role they put him into. And I hate that because I think he's probably going to be the better answer in the 9th, and I don't think you need to have Estevez having his problems back there, and then we go to $11 million guy setting up a guy. Yeah, I think it'd be a lot easier to just give them their roles. But if it works and he takes to it this time, I think Andrew Miller was a prime candidate when he was at his best with the Guardians when they went to the World Series against the Cubs. Then I think he could be such a weapon on a team where you're like, well, all the starters are just good. But, man, any game where they need to just end it, they end it with this guy. I'm with you. I think there's the upside.
I obviously agree with what you're saying. The one thing I'll say in defense of the idea of using him in that role is that kind of was his role in Oakland. Like we talk about what he did with the Royals, but in Oakland, he was the setup guy to Mason Miller for the most part. Like before the Royals acquired him last year, he came into a game in the 9th inning 3 times in 3 months with Oakland. He was an 8th inning guy mostly. Also came into some games in the 7th inning, even a few, I think, in the 6th or earlier. So he has done that role before. Like he came to Kansas City. They desperately needed a closer. He filled that role beautifully, but he has been a setup man and he was successful. That's why they acquired him in the first place, because Mason Miller throws like 103 miles an hour. So they didn't need him in that role. So I'm optimistic that he can adapt back to a role he was already successful in. And yeah, there's some risk, but like you said, if it works and it frees him up, I think that's also part of the narrative, is this idea that the Andrew Miller comp, where it's like, not just that he's really good, but that like he can, the team can call on him whenever they need him, and he's there for them, right? He's the true savior, not the closer, but he's the savior. There's something to be said for that.
Okay. And number 5 for you.
I mean, it's boring, but like you got to pick somebody. I'm putting Michael Walk on the list. If everything goes right, and some of this is just somebody gets lucky, and win-loss records don't matter at all, but maybe if you go like 21-3 or something like that, puts you over the top because you got lucky with win-loss record. And ultimately, if you stay healthy and you throw 190, 200 innings, you've got a chance to win. And Walker has the ability. And I don't know who else. I mean, Lorenzen's in the rotation. Between the two of them, it's got to be Walker. I don't see any other reliever having a shot. I don't think anybody in the minor leagues is going to come up and win a Cy Young as a rookie. So it's Walker by default for me.
I talked to myself. I talked about Michael Walker. I talked about Kyle Wright, and I talked about Alec Marsh. And if either one of those guys were healthy right now, I'd take them over Walker because of the upside.
Exactly.
But because they're not, and this is the one, because you even mentioned to us, do we really need 5 guys in the Cy Young? And I'm like, that's what makes it fun. Right? I didn't have my list. I'm like, that's what makes it fun. We got to dive down and see where it is. And it got unfun when I didn't have, MJ Melendez to me was fun.
Yes.
The MVP number. Michael Walker at 5. I love Michael Walker, but his dependability, he just is what he is, steady Eddie. And that makes it not fun. So I love Michael Walker. I want to be clear, but he's not fun.
Now watch him go out there and prove us both wrong and win the
I would
Cy
love
Young
it.
Award.
That would be great because he's such a great guy too. So I would be thrilled with that. So there it is. It's our exercise diving deep into who can have great seasons for your Kansas City Royals and talking some Jac Caglianone here on the Kaufman Corner podcast. Remember, we're always brought to you by our friends at David Starnes Allstate Insurance. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free, covering all the important things in your world, home, business, life, and even the fun stuff. Motorcycles, boats, ATVs, you name it. Give him and the staff a call at 816-781-7331. Of course, our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. More than 30 years, they've been making parking lot problems disappear. One contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. And the best in the business when it comes to handling any legal cases you've got. If you've been hurt in an accident, what are you waiting for? Northland Injury Law has you covered. Text HURT to 22222 or call 816-400-HURT. Northland Injury Law is Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers serving KC for more than 40 years. For the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, getting close. I think we have 2 more podcasts before the season begins. 2, if I'm wrong, it's 3. But I think it's 2. 2 more podcasts before the regular season begins. And we thank you for listening to us here on the Kaufman Corner podcast. We'll be back at it next week with another edition of the Kaufman Corner.